If you've ever seen an Atlan presentation or me give an Atlan presentation, you know that I typically start with a fun data joke. However, I only have one fun data joke, and I used it all of 2023. So in the absence of that, I'll at least tell you a cool story, and you have a little Easter egg to leave with. Fun fact, I met T-Pain last night in the hotel. So if the data conference isn't going well, just keep your eyes peeled because T-Pain is somewhere in Resorts World just walking around. So keep your eyes peeled. So in place of a joke, I leave you with that. You'll constantly be looking around and paying attention for the rest of the week. So outside of being a diehard hip-hop T-Pain fan, I'm the director of data strategy at Atlan. Plan for today, tell you a little bit about what Atlan's doing when it comes to data products, and then pass it over to the teams that are actually doing it. So we have Cortney Worthy from Dropbox to tell you about their journey with building well-governed data products. If you're not familiar with Atlan, we actually started out as a data team before we were the software company that you know today. So we were doing a lot of data science for good type projects, massive scale projects for the government of India, the United Nations, really cool projects. But behind the scenes, I think as we all know in this room, every day can be chaos on a data team. Constant requests for, can I see that data? Who owns this? Where is this data? What does this column mean? Why is the number on the dashboard wrong? Never ending. These are actually messages from the Slack channel at the time from our analysts and data scientists and engineers. And we actually looked for a metadata management solution as a data team. And I think what we found is in the market, most of the technology at the time was following a very passive style for metadata management and data governance. We found that the tools were typically siloed, meaning it might be great for a data engineering team, but the business doesn't have any idea what they don't even know it exists. Or on the opposite side, you have a great business glossary that the data team's never heard of, and so when they make changes, things are constantly out of sync. They're also very rigid, right? I think that was the only two types of personas that were considered at the time, which was just engineer or a business user. And now we have engineers, data scientists, analysts, analytics engineers, and any title that you can think of, and a massive amount of new roles emerging in data governance. And they were manual. So you're asking a bunch of teams to sort of come together and just start populating a data catalog or a metadata management tool at scale. It just isn't really feasible. And so when we set out to build a tool for ourselves because we couldn't find one in the market, we had a series of principles in mind. We didn't want to take the passive approach of, okay, everyone just comes to the data catalog. We wanted to make this more active approach to metadata management. So we wanted to go from siloed to embedded collaboration. Instead of asking people to log into yet another tool, why don't we just bring the metadata directly to the tools people are already using? So why not just surface all of the definitions and ownership details and metadata information directly in that Tableau dashboard or that Power BI dashboard? Instead of focusing on one persona, why don't we make this more adaptive and configurable? So if you're an engineer and you care more about technical metadata, operational metrics for your data pipelines, you have a customized user experience for that type of persona. Whereas if you're a business analyst, maybe you just care about what is the definition of this metric. ARR means something to one team. Does it mean something for every team? Can we find a common definition? And how can we make this open and extensible and automated? So why don't we automatically collect metadata wherever possible? Why don't we assist business users with things like AI to help them get at least the ball rolling when it comes to things like documentation and writing definitions and descriptions? And we've seen a lot of success so far, so we have a lot of great customers that we're working with, a lot of industry recognition. You may have seen the latest Forrester Wave for enterprise data catalogs. Atlan's the top right leader. But we're still practitioners at heart, and so some of the things I'm most proud of are things like Atlan University, where we're hosting things like master classes, product certifications, just general data governance concept certifications. In fact, if you've all seen your scratch-off tickets that you got in the swag bags or somewhere in the room, you'll have a QR code that actually takes you to Atlan University where you can take our data products course. And we've already seen over 7,000 people enroll in this and 500,000 minutes of time spent in the Atlan University platform. But let's get beyond theory, and I will pass it over to Cortney Worthy, the data governance lead at Dropbox, who will be able to tell you about their journey to building well-governed data products. So, Cortney?
All right, so the goal is not to trip up these stairs. Okay, accomplished. Thank you, Austin. I know, the fear. All right, so I am Cortney Worthy. I data governance leader at Dropbox. And what we do, hopefully you've all used Dropbox before, but we are a place where you store and protect your files. So everything from your cherished memories to your business files, that's the platform. And so we are doing a lot to really understand, like, what does that look like from a business perspective? And then in addition, we have our suite of tools like Dropbox Paper and DocSend, along with integrations like Slack and Zoom, that really is centered around transforming how you communicate with your team. And we are looking beyond traditional storage. So hopefully you've seen our new platform, Dash, where it is a place to search all of your key assets. So when you think about Confluence, Slack, Teams, all of the things that you use on a day-to-day basis, it's a place to go ask a question and you'll immediately get an answer to that question. So what is a data product? I'm not sure how many of you have tried to describe a data product to someone, but it's a hard task. And so what I did here was just list out some of the different definitions here, but I've walked into a room or logged on into a Zoom and tried to explain a data product, and I get like a glazed look of like, okay, it makes sense, but it doesn't. And so one of the key things to take away from this is data products, you should really focus on building a definition for your organization. So it's not gonna look the same, it's gonna be very different, you're gonna iterate off of that definition, but it's key to really take best practices and things that you find on the web and tailor it to your organization, because that's gonna look a lot different. All of these definitions aren't the definitions that we use for Dropbox. And I didn't put our definitions because I didn't want to be criticized for it, So why do you build data products? So for Dropbox, it was challenges around like siloed data sources. We have a lack of ownership and accountability. There's unclear dependency between teams and just kind of hard scaling governance. I'm not sure who has ever tried to scale data governance or start a data governance program, but it's a difficult feat. And so one of the things that we also talk about at Dropbox is kind of this handshake that we have from producer to consumer to producer to finally a report or a metric or a campaign that's being used to really drive revenue or some other business outcome. And so not having a formal handshake between all of those different users and those producers and consumers, and there's just 3 boxes here to the left, but I mean, there could be like 6, 7, 8, right? As you start moving through the data lifecycle, there could be a producer, consumer, producer, consumer, producer, consumer. And so as we're looking at how do we really increase visibility into the that we want teams to use, we are really using data products for that goal. So how are we getting there? So our solutions are really kind of a 4-pronged approach. We are developing a data governance framework. We are defining our data product framework, designing and developing our data products with the use of Atlan and other tooling. And we're also operation and scaling our data product framework as well. So that first step, establishing a domain structure, we're really working with our stakeholders to really figure out what this looks like, not across the web, but for Dropbox, which looks very different from a previous company that I was with, a previous company that I was with. So you really have to think about your organization, how your organization is set up, and how do you make it work for your organization. And then really identifying critical use cases. So this is our data governance structure at Dropbox. We have our data governance executive sponsor. We have our advisory committee. I'm off there to the right trying to figure out how to do all of this work. And then we have this domain-centered approach, right? So as we move towards a more federated approach to ownership, we want marketing to own their data, we want sales to own the data, we want product to own the data, but we need a place to really understand how are we doing that in a cohesive manner. We start looking at how do we build domains. And then we have a domain lead, which would likely be like a director or someone in that. And then they would appoint stewards to really facilitate the day-to-day work of data governance. And then we also have kind of this box off on the side, this special interests working group. And so these are some of the different product projects that our advisory committee would say, hey, we need to think about a better retention policy, or we need to come up with a data class, or we need to onboard a specific tool for data quality or data classification, or all of these different things that are part of data governance. So we will enact these special interest working groups, and they are built for that purpose. And then myself, I manage a COE, and we really strive around how do we centralize our tooling, our processes, our standards, and our capabilities. So how are we getting there? We are defining our data product framework. So this is the second step in kind of this four-pronged approach, where we are really looking at what are our data product principles, what will our approach look like, and then how do we define success for Dropbox. And so for us, our principles are user-centric. So we want to make sure that we are designing data products that fit our users' needs, right? So if we're designing data products and no one's going to use it, that's not a product, right? No one's going to use it, no one's going to buy it, so there's no point in continuing developing that. We want to ensure that they are shareable, right? So just like any other product, we want to ensure that if you have the product, you can share it with someone else or share it with another team. And then documented and discoverable. This is a huge one for us, right? Because we have a lot of data, we have a lot of things, but a lot of times it's not documented. So having a platform like Atlan really helps us to really figure out how do we put things in a central place where we can have users go to figure out where that information is. Then making it scalable and flexible. Your data product shouldn't stay static. They should iterate with users. Once again, we're making it user-centric, so the users will have some concept of what they need today versus some concept of what they need in Q3. So we want to make sure it's scalable and flexible. And of course, we want to make sure that they're reliable. So if you're getting a data product, or if you're getting a product from like Amazon, you want to make sure that you can use the product. You're going to get 5 stars. All of the things we think about with general product management, we want to ensure our data products have those same central principles as well. And so this is kind of, I took this from some research. But there's kind of 2 approaches to data product, right? There's a project-driven approach and a product-driven approach. And I've talked about this a little bit, but project, we really think about, it has a start, it has a finish, right? And so with project, it doesn't really align well to the user-centric piece of our principles. And so that's where we're really driving towards that product-driven approach, where we're thinking about our users first. We want to make sure it's scalable, and we're constantly iterating off of that. So data product-driven approach is where we're leaning towards. So 3, we're designing and developing data products. So one of the most important things is really going through kind of a pilot of really understanding what are your use cases, what tooling are you going to use, how are you going to architect that tooling to be seamless for your users, data quality and certification, as well as prototyping and iteration. So, has anyone seen this canvas? Anyone seen this? Oops, sorry. So this is really helpful. So I've used this as I started talking to people about what data products are, and this is going to be on the site, data mesh architecture. So if you're thinking about putting together data products, you can put this in like Canva or any other platform, but it really walks you through every step of data product development. And this is what I went to with my users when we started thinking about data product architecture. And so if you go through this a little bit, we won't go through it all, but on the right, you'll have your consumers and your use cases, and we'll actually go through a use case of this, so we'll see this in action as well. You have your consumers and use cases, and that's usually where I start because it's user-centric. And then we'll start really thinking about what source systems do we want to include with our data product, as well as like what does that flow look like. So we talked about producer to consumer to producer. We need to figure all of that out to ensure that we are getting the right data to the right people. And then data contracts, this whole new concept of ensuring that we have the right quality. The quality isn't new, right? But this whole concept, having a contract in place, that makes sense, right? My producer should have a formal handshake with the consumer. That other producer should have a formal handshake with the consumer. And so that's what's really getting us to a point where we can have formal quality assurance that the products that we're getting to our end consumers, to our analysts, to our marketing team, to our sales, it's reliable. The 4th one is how do we operationalize and scale the data product framework? And so we're focused on 3 different areas. or establishing a support and maintenance process. And so that's really our COE. That's really listening to our users and understanding how they need to use data products. We are scaling the framework across additional domains. So myself, I started with one domain. Instead of boiling the ocean, I started with our customer experience team. And so they had data products, or they had things out there that they didn't necessarily call them data products, right? So they had dashboards and metrics and all of these things. But as I started talking to them more, I understood, and they understood, hey, this sounds like it could be something that is worth sharing with another team. And so that's where we start small. I started with our customer experience team, and then we kind of scaled up. And then we monitor performance. So we ensure that we're tracking KPIs, we're conducting regular reviews. I'm meeting constantly with the teams to ensure that the tooling that's in place, it makes sense. And then also the framework that we have in place, it makes sense for Dropbox. And so we are gonna go into a use case of how we actually build these. So for this use case, we're converting unpaid users to paid users for a new mobile feature. So think about, we're launching a campaign. We're allowing users to trial the new feature for a limited time, and then we want to convert them into a paid subscriber. And then all the way in our marketing and sales teams, our leaderships, we have a key business metric around conversion rate. So converting a trial user into a paid subscriber. And so our data sources, what are we using? We're using customer profile data, which kind of sits in our customer domain. We're using mobile feature data and trial data, which aligns with our product domain. We talked about how do we build domain-centered products. These are two different teams that we're really bringing together data in a right way to solve the problem. So what are the challenges? Our data producers lack awareness of how changes affect downstream consumers. And so we have our software engineers making changes to data or making changes to an event or whatever it is, right? Not knowing that there's a key business metric that is driving revenue, and not just driving small revenue, right? So driving very large revenue that our company depends on. And they're changing things upstream, not knowing that that has an impact. And then our data consumers, our marketing team, they face uncertainty about the data source. So they don't really know if it's the right data source. They're unclear about who owns the data source. So even if there is an issue, it takes so much time to really figure out, okay, what was the change? Who made the change? Who should I reach out to? So all of the questions that you ask, and I think that Austin presented, that's where the Slacks start coming in. You get pings, 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 pings. People are trying to figure it out. A marketing exec is trying to figure out why we're having a decline in revenue for this business metric. A data engineer is trying to figure out what's going on, while the actual software engineer, right, is moving on to the next project, right? So this is where we get into like that producer, the consumer, the producer, and the consumer, not really knowing who's really using the data. And they're really focused on their own tasks, which, I mean, makes sense. And so we're moving towards how do we actually build that data product? And so this is where on the, hopefully this is on the right side for you all, but the consumers, our marketing, our analytics, our product manager, we're really thinking about what are those use cases. For our marketing team, it is gathering insights from the trial, featured usage to create targeted campaigns. For our analytics and product manager, it may be measuring and reporting the trial users or the features or any other insights that can really be gained from this data. And so this is kind of the process that I went through and that our users went through, or the customer experience and marketing team went through, to really figure out how do we best build these data products to fit Dropbox. I think I took a step, yeah. And so now we start building out what does this architecture look like from a governance and from a producer to a producer-consumer view. So we start listing out what are those source systems. So we're getting data from events, mobile and websites. We're getting tracking mobile feature, trial state and event websites. We're also getting data from customer data, which is a different domain. And then we're combining this, our data engineering team, right, is taking that data, that's that handshake that's needed from producer to this new consumer, our product team, our data engineering team, then getting this data into a raw data source, and then into this processing later. So for us, it looks like we have this data, we're getting this data from our raw data, our mobile features, then we're pushing it into this processing layer, which is a combination of dbt, Airflow, Databricks, Snowflake, you name it, we got it, right? So it's pushing data all into these different processing. And so what we're really here is capturing what does that look like? And then once we have a good understanding of like what data we use, and it's really then the lineage of that data, so understanding where that relationship is from producer to consumer to producer, we start really thinking about, for those different handshakes, what assurances do we need from a data contract perspective? And so for this data product, we're really looking at, we have Databricks SQL, right? So we have common SQL queries that we need to capture for a user. We have Tableau dashboards. So these are dashboards, the metrics that our executives are going to every Monday when they're doing their weekly business reviews. And then we're also capturing all of this information within Atlan, within the data product. And then our terms. So this is where, so if you go into Atlan and I think you can probably go through like a demo of the product. And so for the terms, we want to ensure that people have an understanding of what the terms are when they're looking at this data product. And once again, the data product is just a box, right? When we think about data products for us, it's just a box of assets, right? So things that people know that it's a single source of truth, it's reliable, it has good assurance, and we know who that ownership model is. So through that, we have our customer profile model, which are models that says, hey, a customer is X, Y, and Z. And then we have our feature usage models as well. And then we start thinking about quality. That's when we think about runtime, uptime, all of the other things, and SLAs as well. So all of this information can be put into Atlan in a centralized place. So me as a marketing team, I'm logging on and I'm trying to figure out what data do I need for a campaign. And I can go straight to a data product that says, hey, this is our trial data, this is our customer data. How do I combine it? How do I give that to my data engineering team or my finance team to figure out how do I then create a campaign for X, Y, and Z? And so all this information is available within Atlan right now for our customers. And so they can double click into trial data. They can see all of the 10 or 12 data sources that we're getting that from, which would include like the Databricks SQL, the Tableau, the raw data, all of those, and then also our customer data as well. So what are our key takeaways? So one, we're building a strong data governance framework. So without that ownership model, without those domains, a lot of this is impossible. And we're really setting out standards and outlining what a good data product looks like for your organization. We're empowering teams with federated ownership through iteration. So with data governance, with data products, you're not gonna get it right for the first time, but that's how we're iterating on the process. A definition today may be a different definition tomorrow. So, I'm always telling people, this is like a two-way door decision or two-way decision, right? We're not stuck with this. Let's just get past this so we can keep making movement. We're leading with a product and a domain-driven approach. So we start around organizing our data products into those critical use cases and then really understanding what our users need. We're leveraging tools for efficiency and scalability. So our tool set for data governance right now looks like Atlan is our data catalog. We're leveraging Monte Carlo for our data quality monitoring, and then we're leveraging dbt, Airflow, Databricks, all of the other technologies as well to really get that data from raw all the way to our data lakes. And then this is a big one. So we're partnering with our vendors and leveraging our networks for success. So I pride myself, I always have a lot of networks and I'm like, hey, how are you guys doing data products at your organization? I'm putting messages in LinkedIn, and so that's where this is not a problem just Dropbox has, it's a problem across all organizations. So I'm constantly asking my network, how are you guys doing this, right? And also partnering with your vendors, I think is really important. So not trying to operate in a silo. We work closely with Atlan on a lot of these things. We work closely with Monte Carlo, dbt, Airflow, Databricks, all of these things, right? So really letting them know what your problem is, and they will help you figure out what that looks like. So I think those are our key takeaways.